Did you know that like 25% of the accidents that happen in facilities happen in and around the loading dock?
That's not shocking at all.
I thought it'd be higher, honestly.
What are docks? They're essentially formed from your facility to a trailer, right? And it's always shocked me that, you look at a facility, they're almost looked at as an afterthought.
Clocking In, the podcast for people who keep products moving in and out of industrial facilities every day. I'm your host, Mike Smith, Director of Product here at RDC. Welcome to episode 2 of the Clocking In podcast, brought to you by the Robert Dietrick Company. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Pat.
Thank you.
The episode or the subject we're going to be talking about today is the top 10 mistakes we see at the loading dock every year. It's pretty consistent from year to year. But first, I want to give you a little bit of an introduction. You are what I would call an OG, right? You've been in the industry for how long?
Almost 21 years now.
We probably have listeners out there 21 years old. Tell me a little bit about the different positions that you've held in those 21 years.
Started off as a service technician. I was that for about 15 years, and then 5 years in management, and I've been in sales for about 8-9 months now. So
you were a service manager, quality assurance manager, service tech installer. You've seen it all.
Yep.
Right. Now you're a territory representative. Mm-hmm. Loving it?
So far, yeah, I love it. Fun to apply my skill set this way.
In our pilot episode, which was episode 1, we talked about what high-performing facilities do differently. We had a great conversation with Lisa. And this episode, we're kind of going to piggyback off that. I think in order to have a high-performing facility, which is something we're all after, whether we're running a facility or not, we're trying to do things to the best of our ability. One thing you got to do is look at the mistakes people are out there making. You learn from mistakes. We learn from positive things as well, but sometimes mistakes are the best teacher. So this episode, we're really going to focus in on what those top mistakes are that we see people make every year, and we hope people can avoid them, right? Let me ask you this to start with. In 21 years, what's changed about the kind of mistakes you see out there, specifically in and around the loading dock, or has it pretty much remained the same?
I'd say what's changed most is the nature of the mistakes. It mostly revolves around, and it's happened over the last 5 or 10 years, personnel. Turnover rates. It's really hard to find good people that stick around for a long time. When I first started, 17, 18 years old, there were fork truck drivers that had been there for 20 years. Now, if you get year 2 or 3 out of a fork truck driver, that's pretty solid. So you're dealing with less experienced people that don't know how to use the equipment, probably care a little bit less about the facility and their job. Most of the mistakes, I feel like, revolve around that.
COVID definitely taught us a lot about turnover. I mean, the labor crisis that went on, there kind of was like an exodus of people seeking out these types of careers. And you're right. I think turnover, just the subject or issue of turnover, does have a lot to do with the types of mistakes we see in and around the loading dock every year. Let me ask you this. Are most dock equipment mistakes about the equipment itself or about the people operating them? Where do you see the most error? Is it things not surveying and speccing things right? Or is it more about people just not knowing how to use it properly?
It's both, but I'd say it's more people not using it correctly. That's one of the things that we've been doing over the last 5-10 years is how do we put controls in that can eliminate these variables that lead to accidents or, failures or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely a combination, and they all kind of lead to themselves too. You have the wrong equipment in there, they're not going to use it correctly. They're maybe not going to get trained on it like they should. So it all just makes it worse and worse and builds off itself.
What mistake do you see out there, again, in and around the loading dock, that you would say some facilities are embarrassed to admit they're making it? Is there something that stands out to you that people just don't want to admit or fess up to oh man, we know that issue exists, but we almost don't want to acknowledge it?
There's really 2, and the first one's an easy one. Do you guys do PM on your equipment? And yeah, we do it ourselves. And you look at the equipment and immediately nobody's doing anything correctly on this. The other one is a lot of the times they require catastrophic circumstances before they'll make changes, and rather than, and the policy really should be their equipment, their corporate policy should try to prevent those circumstances. But a a lot of times it takes an accident or a failure before they'll make a change that known they should have made, years ago.
Have you seen old school? Like, we got to climb in the trust tree real quick. If you tell me a mistake you've made out in the field, I'll tell you a mistake I've made. Ooh. Right? Full transparency.
Okay.
This is really embarrassing, but one time I won't say where it was. Luckily, the customer was so cool about it and gracious, but I started installing a door on the wrong opening. Now, I was given some bad information. I will say that, but got the door about installed and realized it needed to be over there, not here. So luckily it had a happy ending, but not one of my finer moments. Mistakes happen.
Yeah. I've never made any mistakes.
Oh, next.
No, the most embarrassing one I've ever made was pulling a vertical leveler RHV up with a fork truck. And I was making deck weld repairs and immediately switched to the curb and didn't move my ground. And, of course, burn the motor up, burn the harness up. I was young. It happened, though.
Dude, thanks for opening up, man. I just thought it was important to, like, sneak that in there. We're not coming at people like we've never made mistakes. We make mistakes, too, and you learn from them and you get better, right?
Yeah, and you were probably like me. You lose a lot of sleep over it.
Oh.
Anytime I made a mistake, and I still will, it bothers me.
It's so embarrassing. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we make little mistakes. Some of the stuff on this list, though, are pretty big mistakes, right? You've been on the side of mistakes that you've made yourself, customer mistakes, maybe mistakes from like other companies who have come in and put equipment in. How has that history, 21 years of seeing mistakes, helped you in your current role today as you're out there advising customers and speccing equipment now and helping people find solutions?
With my experience and, like you said, seeing all the different sides of it now, I kind of know what direction people need pushed. So I just try to give them all the information, try to be as honest with them as possible. Here's what you're looking at, and here's one option, here's another option. You give them the positives and negatives, either way, and you just hope they make the right decision. At the end of the day, it's their decision. My job's to give them the correct information, advice if they want it, and go from there.
And I bet people appreciate having the tenure and the track record there to fall back on.
Oh, yeah. Knowing what I talk about, it helps a lot in this new role for sure.
All right, so great team huddle. Let's, metaphorically speaking, head out to the floor. We're going to do a little floor walk and get into that top 10 list.
Put your PPE on first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do. We should have had PPE here to put on. I did think it was an important statistic to throw out before we get into these top 10. And I'm sure you know this, but our listeners might not. Did you know that 25% of the accidents that happen in facilities happen in and around the loading dock?
That's not shocking at all.
I thought it'd be higher, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, what are docks? They're essentially bridges from your facility to a trailer, right? And it's always shocked me that, you look at a facility, they're almost looked at as an afterthought. It's not really, their primary focus. They're focused on their production equipment, this and that. And the docks and doors are usually, one of the last things they're addressing, but it's statistically one of the biggest liabilities.
Yeah, I mean, you got 10,000-pound trucks flying around, people, you've got blind spots, product being staged. So you ever watch Interstellar when they're at that critical point where they've got to get the ship synced up to the bigger ship, and it's I'm on pins and needles every time I watch it. But when a truck backs into a dock position, that trailer becomes an extension of the building. And it's just like you said, hey, I got an idea. Let's put a ramp into that thing and let's drive a 20,000-pound load across it. It's dangerous, right? Things happen. So the loading dock is a place where we really can't afford to have mistakes. We've got to learn from those mistakes. We can't afford to have any out there because it's so dangerous.
And you'd hope you see the mistakes before they happen and you can address them. It's not always the case, but yeah. And usually those mistakes are pretty costly for property and people. So,
all right, so we're going to go through the top 10 things we see every year. We're going to give people some great practical advice that they can follow and hopefully avoid some of these mistakes. Let's start with number 1. Underrated equipment at the loading dock might be one of the top mistakes that we see all the time. It's either under capacity or not high cycle enough. Talk to me about that. How do I know whether I have the correct capacity, or how do I know that my equipment is rated for what I'm doing? Is there like a formula to follow, or how can I know that?
Yeah, there is a formula for especially dock leveler capacities, but I really see this is super common in people leasing buildings. They sign a lease and they don't know what kind of dock equipment they're getting. They get in there and maybe it was a spec warehouse and it had the most basic, I won't say their names, but most basic dock levelers you can possibly have. And it's just not good enough for what they need to do. And downtime, injury, accidents, it's a big problem.
Yeah, people don't realize, like, that's a great example of someone moving into a space they've never occupied. Well, the levelers were fine for the previous occupant. Well, yeah, they had 10,000-pound trucks and they had 2,000-pound loads.
They had
and
three trucks a day.
One trailer a day, but you move into this space and you've got 15,000-pound forklift, a 5,000-pound battery, and you're getting 24 trucks a day over the course of 3 shifts, and your heaviest load is 10,000 pounds. You need a different piece of equipment to drive across, and people don't realize that. There's a formula for calculating that. That would be a huge mistake we see every year, right? Like having underrated equipment. And great scenario there, moving into a leased space. One other thing I want to call out on this point is talk to me about companies not looking far enough into the future. When you're at a crossroads and you need new equipment, right? Your needs right now might say, hey, I need a 40,000-pound dock leveler and I need this and that. Give us some advice on like thinking 5 or 10 years into the future, though. Should I like overrate or overcapacity that equipment because I know in 5 years I'm going to be getting an engine block line coming into my facility and I'm going to have heavier loads? Should I prepare for that ahead of time? Is that something that you see every year as a mistake?
Yeah. I mean, you always want to plan on you, and hopefully business is good and you're going to need more capacity down the line. I met with a customer a couple of days ago that wanted to move a smaller door into a bigger opening and build the opening down. And I convinced him, I'm like, you don't know, maybe you don't need 14 feet right now, but in 5 years, you don't want to remove that capability. So yeah, generally speaking, like you don't want to limit yourself in the future. You want to plan on growth, plan on things going well, and go for the higher capacity, go for the larger, whatever it is, typically.
All right, number 2, you've already talked about this once, so we probably don't need to park on it too long, but this is like uber important, right? Another mistake we see every year is skipping or even deferring on preventative maintenance or not doing it frequently enough, right? The data shows us that when you do preventative maintenance faithfully, you could be saving 5 to 20% on energy costs, and you could be saving, almost up to 20% on like service costs. So it's very, very important, not to mention warranties and safety and all the things that factor in as far as reasons to do it. But I think a common mistake we see is, like you said a minute ago, people saying, yeah, we do it. But then you go out to the loading docks and you can tell, like, I don't think they're really doing it. Or some places just flat out choose not to do it. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, obviously PM's a large part of what we do. I've done a lot of them over my years, and it's really important. I've always tried to tell people you can pay for a PM now, and it's going to be much cheaper, or you can let those problems keep growing and growing and growing, and then multiply, and then in 5 years you have a massive issue. And I've actually, to bring up your COVID example again, I've run into a lot of my customers now that I personally used to do PM for in the 2010s, stopped doing PM right around 2020. And we're running into equipment failure after equipment failure now just because they weren't maintained properly. But, a lot of our equipment, if you perform PM, you take care of it as you should, you're going to get 10, 15, 20 years out of it typically. So, and if you don't, depending on your facility, you're looking at like 5.
Yeah, makes a big difference. All right, number 3, and this is one like, again, I don't know how to prioritize some of these. They're so important. I think another mistake that we see at the loading dock is not choosing the proper trailer restraint. Like, we just said a minute ago, like when a trailer backs up to your facility, they become an extension of your building. And sometimes you go into facilities and you see a trailer being restrained or them trying to restrain a trailer with some kind of vehicle restraint, and you can tell right away that restraint was not intended for that trailer. What does a customer need to know about the type of truck they have backing up to their dock so that they can get or make sure they have the right restraint?
I guess we start with it. It is an OSHA requirement to
Yeah.
restrain a truck.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, whether it's a wheel chalk, which you can say people do, but it never really happens. GWC all the way up to rotating hooks, hydraulic hooks, GWLs. It really depends on the application where you want to be in. If you're just a standard facility over the road trucks, a rotating hook is a great option. That's the bread and butter. That's what most people have. Maybe you get some sea containers, and that's where Rawhide kind of sets themselves apart. They have the shadow hook. They have a little bit more capability with how they lock into some oddball trailers, or maybe you have a box truck with a lift gate on it.
What do you do there?
GWL.
Yeah, you got to restrain the wheel.
Yeah, you got to restrain the wheel, and it's the one lock out there that can lock into everything. So pretty much without exception.
So, I mean, the best advice we could give people is like know the type of trailer that's backing up to your facility and get your restraints lined up accordingly to the type of trailer.
Yep.
All right, number 4. Oh, man, I'm going to say this every time. I think
This is a big one here.
this is a big one, and it's become a big thing. It wasn't back when we started, and you saw a lot more mechanical operation out there. This wasn't a thing. But number 4, a big mistake we see out there is not choosing the right type of interlocks to get the desired sequence of operation you want. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing to do is when I'm thinking about this is look back at what Rawhide's restraints have done over the years. You go to the LDL 500 and there was no capability. You had to add a relay in. You go up to the SDL and all of a sudden you had a relay. You could put that in there. Yep. And then you have the RHR, which you have a CPU board or an options board you can add in there to add interlocks. And now it comes standard. Every single lock they have, Gen 2, has that control box with that capability built into it. And that just shows you how important that is and how much this industry has started to lean on that capability. And to one of my points earlier, it's a really good way to deal with high turnover rate, personnel that aren't trained correctly, force people to go through that correct sequence. One of my favorite things, we'll put one of these systems in and it takes me forever to run this equipment now. I'm like, no, your sequence hasn't changed one bit. You're just being forced to do it now.
Yeah.
Where earlier you would just raise the leveler and do what you need to do. Now you have 2 or 3 steps you have to go through, which you should have always been doing, but now you're forced to do it.
Yeah, you talked a minute ago in our team huddle about high turnover, and you might have a different person every year, every 2 years, every 6 months. And it's almost like the industry has tried to people-proof some of the processes and safety things out there. And interlocking your loading dock equipment is a way to make sure people are going through the right paces, right? What's the most important, and I'm leading you on this question, I'll admit it. What's the most important interlock at any loading dock if you have a trailer restraint?
Green light interlock. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's it do?
Well, green light interlock, I cannot, are you including the door?
No,
Or
just do green light.
Just
Just
low?
put, yeah.
So truck backs in. I cannot raise my leveler and place it into the truck until I hit my dock locking gauge. And I either have to have a good green light or throw it in to override, and then I can raise my leveler, place it in the trailer. I cannot unlock my lock until my leveler is stored. And that is how you prevent trailers from pulling out. It's how you prevent fork truck drivers from driving into a trailer and going on a little trip,
Yeah. Yeah, no one wants to go on that trip. No one wants to go for a ride in a trailer that's departed too early.
It happens. It happens a lot.
Yeah, if we could give some of the best advice we could give is if you have restraints at your loading dock and you have hydraulic levelers or airbag levelers or levelers that are electrically powered and controlled, make it interlocked so that you have to lock the lock first. That's where safety starts in a facility, is at the dock lock.
Even if you don't have a hydraulic leveler, if you have a door with an operator, I can do it with that too. So, obviously your leveler's not a part of that function.
Great point.
But I can make it to where I can't open my door until, my lock is locked. And you just force people to go through that correct sequence, which they should be going through anyway. But I don't know what the statistic is of 25%, but I bet you that is a really, really high percentage of accidents on docks.
If I'm a facility owner of a facility that has high GMP expectations and I can't have doors open, I think another great interlock at the loading dock is what you just said. Well, you kind of said it. Introducing an interlock so that a door has to be closed before a lock can be unlocked or a leveler has to be stored or both. If you've got a problem with doors being open, birds flying in, pests getting in, you can interlock that all out. You can get rid of that problem and get around a person forgetting it by having a sequence of operation and interlocks.
Yeah, that'd be a closed door policy, and that's what you see a lot of pharma, food grade. Like they don't ever want their facility to be exposed to open air. So the door either needs to be closed or a trailer needs to be backed up to the position, and then at that point your seal takes over, and then you can have an open door policy, but a lot of times at that point you want to bring in what we call a dock guardian or some kind of physical barrier there to keep people from driving off the dock.
Which we are going to talk about here in a minute. All right, number 5, and me and you could probably riff on this for a long time, but another mistake we see at the loading dock is going cheap isn't always better. And actually, it's not always cheaper in the long run. So when you think about brush seal versus nail-on seal, insulated doors versus non-insulated doors, mechanical levelers versus powered, motor-operated dock doors versus manual, it might seem cheaper up front, but you have more costs associated with service, things breaking down, components wearing faster, safety. Talk me through that. Like, I think it's a mistake we see. You know, you get a quote and you think, oh, I'm going to go with the cheaper option, but what's the actual cost as time progresses?
Yeah, that's pretty much what my job is right now. Like I've had the advantage of I've installed equipment where I've now replaced. It went through its entire life cycle. So I've seen, what that cheap stuff does over the years, how it performs versus the more expensive stuff, and I can give really good educated reasons why you would rather, and it's not always going to happen. Sometimes, there's a budget, you got to stick with your budget, but more often than not, you're better going with the more expensive option, and it's going to pay off in the long term. It's going to pay off on maintenance costs. And what's one catastrophic accident cost?
Right.
If it prevents one, and you'll never know if it did, if it prevents one, then you've saved millions of dollars there. So that's kind of the decision making you have to make when you're looking at that.
So number 6, we kind of already touched on this a minute ago when you talked about the dock guardian, but another huge mistake we see people make is when they're thinking about ventilation in their facility and fall protection at the loading dock. So here's the scenario. I know that I've got a lot of welding going on in my facility. I've got a turret system that's cranking out smog and fumes and all the things from production. I really need to get doors up. I got to have doors open. I got to have movement through the facility so people are cooled off and have good morale and all the things. But when a door is open at the loading dock, what hazard does that present?
Several, actually. The first one is, pedestrians, fork trucks going off the dock.
Yeah.
That's a big one, but also security is another one in certain facilities.
Great point.
Some places you have to have a barrier at that door all the time. It's not a barricaded, facility that's open 24/7. There's times that you need to leave that door open. It needs to just be secured. So yeah, those are the two big hazards you're looking at. And then bugs, birds, pests is another thing that, a screen door could help with. Maybe I need that ventilation, but I can't allow pests to come into my building. So that's another option to look at.
And that's exactly right. Like, I think you got to think through, if I want ventilation, but I'm a GMP facility and I can't have birds flying in, I need to have some kind of bug door, either a Rasco bug door or a bug shield from Right Height. Like, I need to have something in the opening to allow ventilation in but keep pests out. And if you don't have the pest requirement, and you say, well, yeah, I can have doors open, no problem. If a bird gets in here every now and then, no big deal. That's great, but it is an OSHA mandate that 4-foot fall protection be adhered to or provided at the loading dock, because that's a 4-foot fall hazard. So you need to have something like a dock guardian or a dock gate, or maybe even in conjunction with that, a safety lip leveler, because believe it or not, people do drive off the docks.
Yep.
I hate that it happens. It's embarrassing when it happens. It's dangerous when it happens. But things like the dock guardians and the dock gate and safety lip levelers can help you be OSHA compliant and allow for the ventilation to come in.
And we can often integrate that into our sequencing.
Yes.
So that's another thing to touch on there. I can make it a part of my sequence so that I force people to go through that process as well.
All right, number 7, and this is one I'm really passionate about and having a keen eye on because we're getting into facilities and doing safety consultations more. not keeping the loading dock area free of pedestrian truck driver interaction. So here's what I mean by this. Like you walk into a lot of facilities and you have drivers and people coming in from the outside walking into a busy dock environment, but having nothing to check them. There's no guardrail around them. There's no swing gate. And when you walk in from outside on a sunny day, right, like your eyes are dilating, you might be looking at paperwork and you're not really paying attention. And as soon as you break that plane of an exterior door, you got forklifts buzzing by, all kinds of things going on. And a common mistake I see at the loading dock is like not thinking about forklift and pedestrian separation. So talk me through that problem. We kind of already shared the statistic, and talk me through some of the things you can do in and around the loading dock to address that issue. There's a lot of solutions.
Yeah, so that's a massive issue. It really, especially buildings that are a little bit older.
Legacy buildings.
Yeah, legacy buildings, that's a big one. There was just no really ever differentiation between, pedestrian area and PIT areas. Some of these bigger warehouses, it's still an issue, but, there's a little bit more space. Yeah, separation from pedestrians and PIT. You don't know who's going to be walking through your facility. You don't really know who's going to be driving your PITs. Whatever you can do to separate those two is extremely important. You have a 10,000-pound fork truck hauling a 5,000-pound pallet going 5 miles an hour. It's not going to turn out well for a pedestrian. So obviously there's all kinds of options. There's guard railing is a good one.
Just creating a corral for someone to step into just to check themselves for like 2 or 3 seconds. At least they're entering a protected area. It can be 4x4, whatever, as long as it's ADA compliant and doesn't impede egress. But having a safe zone for a truck driver to step into and at least have to acknowledge, like look left and right. Whereas if they have nothing, they walk right in and just keep going. And they can be on their phone, whatever. I know some people would say, well, we got the same drivers coming here every day. They know the dock and they're familiar with us. But what happens when they're on vacation and you got a substitute driver? I mean, there's just all kinds of scenarios where it's better to have someone have a safe place to step into and be protected, right? Talk to me about like pedestrians walking parallel with the docks. What kind of like solutions are out there to keep people safe and aware that like a truck or a fork truck is in a trailer?
There's different options for the fork truck itself and for the pedestrians. Fork trucks, there's all kinds of lighting you can do that help keep the pedestrian aware. There's new AI products out there that have read out to a monitor on the fork truck that lets them know pedestrians are in the area. For the pedestrians, you have obviously guard railing, which I mentioned. You can physically separate the traffic. It's not always an option. There's, all kinds of walkways you can put in there, laser walkways. You can put safety signals, one of my favorite products. If you have a crossing, it shoots that stop sign down to let the fork truck know, hey, somebody's coming through, or, vice versa.
Talk to me about PedView.
Oh, PedView.
My favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Products out there.
So PedView, fork truck drives into, and this is, to your point, walking across the dock, For some circumstances, that crosswalk is the dock. People are walking right up against it or right over the place themselves. And if you're walking essentially perpendicular to your trailers, you're not able to see what's going on in there, So PedView, when a truck, a PIT, pulls into a trailer, that sensor puts out a blue light on the dock leveler itself, showing pedestrians, hey, there's traffic at this position right now. Avoid it.
The forklift blue light in general was one of the best things that ever happened to industry. And then when Right Height came out with PedView, again, it's a universal language now. Like when I see a blue light, I need to avoid it. I just think that's one of the greatest ways to keep pedestrians safe at the loading dock.
When I'm walking on docks, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just knowing that you just don't know. You're walking, I might walk across 50 docks. 3 of them might be occupied. You'll never know unless there's a PedView there.
All right, number 8, and we almost started talking about this a little bit ago. I was proud of us for not going down this road because I knew this was coming up. Another common mistake we see is we know mistakes and things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen and things are going to go wrong at the loading dock, right? One scenario is something you already alluded to. Sometimes your trailer restraint might have a mechanical issue, or It might be down for service or whatever, and it doesn't latch the trailer. Maybe the trailer has a damaged rig bar or ICC bar, or there's not one there at all. And the scenario is someone goes up to push lock, and we all know what happens. It doesn't lock, and we get that annoying beep, 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 beep. Something's wrong. A big mistake I see every year at the loading dock, and you can speak to this because I'm sure you've seen it too, is people don't know what to do when that happens. What do they do?
It depends on the facility and really what that facility management wants them to do. Because some places, you have the horn override. Mm-hmm. You hit 1, 2, 2, 3, or maybe it's just a single button depending on the model. And I essentially override that lock. I throw a red light on the outside, flashing red and green on the inside. So light communication that is there. And then technically somebody is supposed to chalk the wheel of that trailer.
Yes.
So whether that happens or not, who knows? But I've actually run in a lot of facilities lately that don't want their dock workers or truck drivers to know about that capability. So I'll either change the code for them or put a key switch in there, and they'd rather get a manager involved to see why didn't we get a good lock here? Is it an issue with the truck? Is it an issue with the restraint itself? Or, what was wrong with that process? So, and that's what's great about Right Height products right now. It's so programmable. Whatever they want to do, we can find a way to get there.
Yeah, I just think I'm so passionate about, like I said, when things go wrong and you don't get a safe hook, what do you do? I don't think people realize the instructions for a dock lock override are right on the cover of the control box. And you said it, you got to go outside or utilize lock view if you have lock view camera system. You got to go see what's wrong. You got to put a wheel chock in place. And then you have to come in and hit horn override, and you can load safely because you've met the minimum OSHA requirement by having a wheel chock in place. Or better yet, maybe your training tells you, hey, let's move that driver down to a position where the dock lock is working or where the trailer restraint is working. I think training and teaching people what to do when things go wrong is something that's very needed, and it's a mistake we see. It's a hole we see. Number 9, and man, this is a big one. This is a big one. Pushing production too close to the docks, not having enough space after the loading dock. It can create bottlenecks, blind corners because product is stacked up so high, near misses, congestion, accidents, all of the things. I think people are especially since COVID, real estate's become expensive. Buying buildings and expanding left to right, so to speak, has become expensive. So people are bringing in new production lines, relying on global supply chain less. They're getting more stuff in their facility from a material standpoint, and they got to find that space somewhere. So they either go up or they push things closer to the dock. And when you push all that up closer to the dock, what happens? What's the danger there?
Well, you're introducing more risk with pedestrians and PITs. The closer they get, the higher likelihood there will be an accident. You're also introducing your equipment, your production equipment, your material. The further you can keep that barrier, the better off you'll be.
And you typically want really up to 120 feet of room after the loading dock of nothing but free space, but at least 100 feet, right? It's just a problem that's kind of becoming trendy nowadays, people just trying to find room, bringing in more production lines, whatever it is. And they're finding that space at the loading dock, but they don't realize they're creating blind spots and just more room for accidents to happen. That's a huge problem. Lastly, maybe not lastly, if you've thought of something else, but lastly, what we have on our list of top 10 mistakes we see at the loading dock is not standardizing equipment, right? If at all possible, we'd love to see customers have the same type of equipment at their loading docks. And we walk into some facilities and there's just a hodgepodge of equipment. Talk to me about the headaches and pains that can create for customers.
Yeah, from several different perspectives. The first one, training your personnel to use it. If I have 4 different models of locks and restraints and levelers and doors, it's going to be really hard for me to expect. They're all going to be operated differently. I have to train them all on each one of them individually. You increase your risk for error. And then I know, too, from the service side of things, it's so much easier to work on. I can keep parts for 1 door. I can't keep parts for 5 doors. I don't have the space to do it. You guys, customers probably don't have the space to do it. So the more you can keep, your dock equipment, your doors standardized, the better lead time on parts you'll have. We might be able to stock parts, the quicker the service will be, in my opinion. It's easier to troubleshoot. Yeah, it'd just be a better experience all around.
Well, that was a great top 10 list. Let's move into our last segment, like shift change, right? You and I clock out. Customers will be clocking in. After hearing a list like this, what is one practical thing, or maybe a couple practical things, that someone listening to this podcast could do to evaluate their loading dock?
First thing, I would talk to your personnel, truck drivers, to see what they're running into, what kind of issues. Sometimes they're not even using stuff correctly, or they don't even know what to do a lot of the time. So talk to them, watch them operate, just spend time with them, understand their process. And the second thing, I wouldn't be afraid to reach out to professionals. I've always been the kind of person like, I don't need help. I'll get this figured out myself. But, this is what I've dedicated my life to at this point. It's 21 years. I understand what's going on there. I can help, even if you're not going to use me, or, I just want to help you with your process. And I think I'm pretty confident I can do that.
Yeah, whether it's us or another company, if you have someone else taking care of your loading docks, like, that is great advice. I mean, number one, I didn't think of that. Like, just go out and talk to the people operating the equipment. What near misses have they have? What pain points do they have? Talk to your drivers. That's a great way to assess where you're at. Secondly, get with your service provider, right? They're the professional. Some of them have been doing it 21 years, maybe even 30 years. They've seen it all. They've seen the mistakes. They've seen the problems. Have them come out and walk the docks with you and just get a list of deficiencies going and see where you're at. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. It's been great having you on the show. We'll see you out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Clocking In, brought to you by RDC. If this was helpful to you, share this episode with someone else you think might benefit from it. Don't forget to follow the show, and if you want more insights like this via email, go to rd-co.com.